Welcome back, American Seminar students, to a second day of a discussion on David Brooks's article. Uh, Hopefully you've been reading along with us and you're up through the second reading section. My comments today probably a little bit shorter than the last video. This was a shorter reading section, and therefore I just have fewer things to say about it. But I hope more than anything that whether or not you're enjoying the reading or not, it is making you think, and I hope make connections with a lot of the literature that we've read. In a lot of ways, this article is the story of America. It's a progression of the picture of family in America over the course of time and how historical events have affected that. And so reading through that lens, I think, can be helpful when we read an article like this. The first thing I wanted to point out today, there was a sentence that started with, "The people who suffer the most from the decline in family support are the vulnerable." Now, to a certain extent, that statement is just obvious. The people who suffer the most are the most vulnerable. That's a universal truth. Whatever is going on in the world, that's the case. But in the frame of this article, which was written, a couple of months ago, I think about our current times. I think about the social distancing and the quarantining that we're experiencing right now, and the people who suffer the most are the most vulnerable, particularly regarding those without an extended family. I look at my yesterday. I'm filming this on Monday, and so yesterday was Easter Sunday. Now, Easter Sunday is typically a huge family day for me. I've had my extended family on both my mom's side and my dad's side for the last 40 years. All I know is spending all of that time with extended family. We obviously couldn't do that this year, but we could get together on the computer. I was fortunate enough because I would say I'm not one of the most vulnerable. I got to spend time with extended family yesterday. We set up a Zoom session for our coffee time. Coffee time is just a Dutch word for 3 o'clock in the afternoon dessert, and we're not ashamed to eat many times a day and talk and laugh and joke over that. And so yesterday we set up a Zoom and shared coffee time together. And so a lot of my aunts and uncles and cousins from around the U.S. were on that, including my 93-year-old grandmother. She wasn't on the video. She's not quite ready to advance to the video stage yet, but she was able to call in and just to hear her joy at being able to listen in on the conversation and to hear her laugh. I miss her a lot. I know that with our current situation, I don't know when I get to see her again. But we as a group, because of our extended family, got to lessen the loneliness a little bit. And I guess I just immediately thought of that when rereading this article today. It is the most vulnerable who are suffering the most. And that's typically the case. And I guess I'd never thought about the family structure as something that would make somebody vulnerable. Another thing that it just doesn't quit in this article. There's so many statistics in this that talk about just how much the decisions by parents affect their children. You get all these statistics in here about, if it's a single parent home in poverty versus a two-parent home in poverty. Whether or not you were born of a certain race. All of these things that a child really has no control over and in the case of this article, so many family decisions made before the child was ever born, or even while they were there, that a child cannot have any control over. To me, I guess it's somewhat humbling. So many of us, particularly in America, we're immensely proud of our hard work, and we would say that we have brought ourselves to the place we are today. I know many of you you've achieved a lot. At your age, a lot of you have been very successful, and we have a tendency to thump our own chest about that and to say, look at the hard work I've done. I think no matter what, we must all recognize and be humbled by the luck of birth. Whatever your advantages may or may not be, there have been certain aspects of your birth that you had no control over that certainly have helped you be where you are today. I was born into a family that valued the extended family on both sides. I know the advantages that is provided. And I talked about some of the advantages to my children in our last video. But there's just so much that birth not necessarily determines, but statistically bends us towards. And that should really humble us in a lot of ways. A third thing that I saw, just how much slavery matters. We spent our time in the slavery unit, and I think it's so tempting to think about slavery in the past. But you get the large paragraph about how black single-parent families are most concentrated in precisely those parts of the country in which slavery was most prevalent. There is a trickle-down effect, even this many years later, of slavery. We talked at length in class about the strategies to break up the family in order to dehumanize. Well, if families were broken up then, there is no extended family starting there. If you have no idea who your family is, if they broke apart families then, you can see why the family structure or the family lineage is weaker in those areas of the country. They have fewer generations of even possible family and fewer generations of family being a priority. The splitting up of families in slavery fundamentally changed America, and it changed the lives of today's children in those areas from those lines. We can say, it's time to move on, and slavery is done. We can say those things, and that's fine. But you cannot ignore the fact that there has been a major trickle-down effect, and this article points that out. The last thing that was just, I don't know if I want to say shocking, but it's such a huge number. 35% of Americans over 45 say they are chronically lonely. 1/3 of people over the age of 45 say that they're lonely. For a number of reasons, I'm sure. Obviously, the author is using this statistic in this article for a reason. But that's huge. 1/3. For God's sakes, guys, today, if you have grandparents, write them a letter. Give them a call. Send a Snapchat to an aunt or an uncle. Do whatever you do. But for 1/3 of people over 45 to feel chronically lonely, not lonely some of the time, chronically lonely, it speaks to what our individualism and our personal pursuits have done to our relationships and to those who have come before us in our families. You can decide what your responsibility is to the people who are older than 45, particularly those you're related to. But, my goodness, 1/3 are chronically lonely. We can do something about that. And I feel like we should do something about that. Again, I always leave it to you to decide. Let the reading affect you in its own way. But that's a shocking number to me. I'll make sure and post some possible writing prompts for you on this. But again, I'd love to hear what you have to say about the article. I'd love to hear what you're thinking and what you're writing. So let this article challenge your mind and challenge some of your assumptions, and hopefully make you come out of this having thought a lot about how the literature connects and how your life today connects to this as well. I'll be back for reading 3. Thanks for listening.